The Earth is 71% water, yet the top result on Google says that aquatic animals take up a mere 20% of life on Earth, which could be correct. Who am I to tell whoever wrote that they're wrong? But it just flat out sounds inaccurate. Another source says that up to 80% of the Earth's animals are aquatic. So basically, I'm smarter than Google because I don't contradict myself. But the point is that nobody really knows what the ratio of land organisms to aquatic ones are. But the aquatic ones are usually just so much cooler. Take, for example, the electric eel. As the name suggests, it's an eel that can produce electricity, which is definitely way more unique than anything a land animal has to offer. The land equivalent to that is like an elephant that's shrunk and spray water out of them. So either a built-in water gun that's pretty mediocre, or a taser. You choose. Anyways, that's besides the point. As everyone learned in like second grade, the ocean has layers. The top layer being the sunlight zone, where you can still see the sun. This is where 90% of aquatic animals live. Then the twilight zone, where you can still kinda see the sun, but it's super faint. The deeper we go in the ocean, the higher the pressure, which correlates to the fish being cooler, more unique, and more weird looking. Anyways, then there's the midnight zone, where you can't really see anything without some sort of bioluminescence, which is a type of gel that fish carry that glows, or a flashlight. This is the max diving depth of the sperm whale, which is pretty cool. Finally, we have the abyssal zone and the hydropelagic zone, H zone for short. They're both so deep they might as well be grouped together. 75% of the ocean floor is in the abyssal zone, while the rest is spread out through the other zone. Now let's take a look at some unique and interesting fish from every layer. The sunlit zone of the ocean has the majority of the aquatic animals, yet it has the least interesting selection. Most of the animals are just generic fish, like tuna and mackerel, which, because of that, I'm only gonna talk about the top 4 coolest fish in the sunlight zone. Number 4, sharks. Sharks aren't that cool, they're just big fish with sharp teeth, but they're still more interesting than fish like guppies or sardines. Number 3, sea turtles. Turtles are cool and all, but all they have going for them are their shells. They only really get this high because of that one sea turtle in Finding Nemo that was definitely on something. Other than that, they have to fight for their lives the second they hatch, because for some odd reason, they hatch out of water and are hella stupid, so they crawl the wrong direction, only to be mauled by a pit bull or just be run over. That's probably why only 10% of sea turtles make it to adulthood, but that's besides the point. Number 2, stingrays. Stingrays are dope. Not much to say about them, but they seem pretty chill. Anyways, the moment you've been waiting for. Number 1, electric eels. These slimy sons of bitches are so cool that I use them as the example of how much cooler aquatic animals are compared to land losers. I don't even need to explain how cool these MFs are. Check out this video of them using their magic. Number 0, the peacock mantis shrimp. The peacock mantis shrimp is mega awesome. Its punches are so fast that they heat the water around their fist/club thingy to temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. For like a few milliseconds probably. They also look freaky as hell, which is definitely a plus in my book. If there were a mantis shrimp the size of a human, then if it hit a baseball, it would probably send it into orbit. But not only that, it would probably rip it into little tiny pieces and set it on fire. Other than that, there isn't much to talk about, cool creatures wise, in the sunlight zone. So, there's a lot of pretty iconic fish in the twilight zone, which is where you can still see the sun if you really try to, but it's pretty hard. These animals are just too cool to rank, so let's just talk about some instead. The bristlemouth is a pretty small vertebrate fish that lives in the, you guessed it, twilight zone. These fish are like the cover image of freaky deep ocean fish for me, and for a good reason too. We physically cannot tell how many bristlemouths there are in the world, but some estimates reach as high as a few dozen trillion. That's the biggest population of fish known to ever exist. Because of the lack of light, most fish down in the twilight zone and below have this weird gel-like chemical called bioluminescence, which is basically a built-in glow stick that never fades. Bristlemouths are no exception to that. They have bioluminescence in their body, and so does this next creature, the cuttlefish. Cuttlefish can change the color of their skin on command to match their environment. They also try to match the texture of whatever it is they're colored as. Cuttlefish are a part of the squid family, and can also spray ink like squid. But if their stealth is really all that, I don't see why they would even need that ability. They're basically like the chameleons of the sea, except for the fact they have 3 hearts and a razor-sharp beak. The second to last species we're talking about from the Twilight Zone is the Japanese spider crab. While they don't exclusively live in the Twilight Zone, they're cool enough to get on this list. These giants are the largest crustaceans, period, and they can grow up to 12 feet long, and even though they could hunt live prey for food, they don't. They scavenge the seafloor for dead fish to eat, and going along with that, they aren't aggressive at all. That is, unless you go for it first, which is pretty dumb considering how badass they are. I'm pretty sure Gordon Ramsay made a video about catching them in Alaska, and he made a joke about ripping his balls off or something along those lines. Pretty sure he also put mayonnaise on them, which permanently lost my respect for Gordon Ramsay, because mayonnaise is disgusting. Anyways, last but not least for the Twilight Zone, everybody's favorite 8-legged freak, the octopus. When doing research on them, I found this video from National Geographic Kids that is now one of my least favorite videos on the internet. I'll link it in the description. I'm not going to bore you with the details that you probably already know, like them having 8 tentacles and being able to spray ink. I'll tell you the real freaky things about them. Like cuttlefish, they have 3 hearts. They also have blue blood and are super old. The oldest fossil we have of them dates back to 296 million years ago. Everyone says that the plural is octopi or octopuses, but they're both wrong. The real correct plural is octopods. But let's be realistic, nobody's gonna use that. It's pretty common knowledge that octopods are like really smart, like almost human level smart. They're smarter than dolphins, they're smarter than dogs, and even pigs. Some smooth-brainers like to claim that octopods aren't smarter than humans, but to that I like to say, have you ever seen one do an IQ test? Then they'll say something like, but why is it such an achievement for them to open jars then? That question is so stupid that I have neither the time nor the crayons to explain this to you, and I envy everyone you have never met. That's it for the Twilight Zone. We're halfway done. When you think of freaky fish, like 90% of what comes to mind probably lives in the Midnight Zone. Most fish here either have super large eyes so they can actually see in the dark waters of the Midnight Zone, or have super tiny eyes and don't rely on sight at all. A perfect example of this is the owlfish, who have gigantic eyes and would probably go blind instantly if they even saw a glimpse of the sun. Okay, so imagine you're an owlfish just chilling in the Midnight Zone, swimming around, then you just see a little faint glint of light. So you swim as fast as you can, hoping that it's something that you can actually eat. As you get closer to this small light, you notice a silhouette behind it, but you're just a dumb fish, so you decided to pay it no mind. When you arrive at the light, you realize that you've made a huge mistake, and the next thing you know, you've been sucked into the mouth of an anglerfish, only to be swallowed whole. So yeah, anglerfish, also known as one of the most iconic fish, period, live in the Midnight Zone, and they're hunters, no surprise. They're like the size of a basketball and weigh 110 pounds, which is like super heavy for a fish. They have this appendage sticking out of their skull called a lure, which, as the name suggests, attracts prey to the anglerfish. The tip of the lure has bioluminescence in it, making it glow, and they have a ginormous mouth plus a really stretchy body, meaning they can eat fish up to twice their size. Males are super useless though. They basically completely mooch off the females because they're the size of my pointer finger and they don't have a lure. But that's enough about the anglerfish. On the theme of big mouths, the gulper eel fits right in with the Midnight Zone's circus of freaks. They can grow up to be 3 feet long and have massive jaws and stomachs, which lets them swallow their prey whole, just like the anglerfish. Their jaws unhinge, making their skin underneath look like a pelican's sack. Thus, they're sometimes called the pelican eel. Even though the gulper eel has a massive mouth, they mostly just eat small crustaceans, which is pretty weird. They inflate their jaws sometimes with water to look bigger as a defense mechanism. When I googled, do gulper eels live in the midnight zone, to double check my research, I noticed that the third result was the gulper eels page on the Octonauts wiki, which would have been fine, but the page is like super dead. It's only like 2 paragraphs long, and only has 2 comments, one of them being, "They remind me of tacos," posted by Chuggington's biggest fan. I wonder what he's doing right now. He's hopefully still alive. But Octonauts is fire. I bet they made an episode on every single fish I've talked about so far, and every fish I'm going to talk about. My favorite Octonauts episode was probably the one about the vampire squids, which are squids that have blood red skin and empty blue eyes. They have the biggest eyes in the world compared to their body size, and unlike other squids, their tentacles are webbed, which makes them look like they have a cape on, which is probably why they have their name. Since they live in the Midnight Zone, ink isn't as effective as it is when predators use sight to hunt, so their alternate defense mechanism is turning into a squid ball. Like Dracula himself, vampire squids don't age. Fossils for them have been found from around 300 million years ago, and for some reason they haven't evolved at all. Their anatomy has stayed almost the exact same for 300 plus million years. They get their sustenance from marine snow, which is basically sinking particles of dead fish from somewhere above them. Marine snow is basically found everywhere in the deep ocean. Sadly, vampire squids are in danger of going extinct for all the usual reasons: overfishing, global warming, pollution, etc. We have 3 more fish to talk about in the Midnight Zone, one of them being the blobfish. The blobfish was super popular about a decade ago because of this image. Kinda weird that the internet was obsessed with a picture of a blobfish corpse, and the only reason they look like that is because their bodies are so adapted to high pressures that if you just bring them up to surface level, they basically melt. Also, you can literally see it drooling out its organs. A surprising amount of people Google if they could actually keep blobfish as a pet, which shows how downright dumb people are. Scientists also have literally no clue how blobfish reproduce, yet they're super endangered. Blobfish are one of the more tame fish of the Midnight Zone that we're going to be looking at. Moving on, the bearlie fish. These freaks are interesting because they have translucent forehead, and you can see their shiny eyes in their sockets, which look fairly cool. They were also on Daily Dose of Internet like a year or 2 ago around Halloween. The reason they look like they're looking up is because they always are. That's how they scan for food, by looking for traces of light above them. They can also roll their eyes forward to see in front of them on command. Bearlie fish are in Animal Crossing New Horizon, but sadly you have to catch them in the regular surface ocean and don't get to dive several thousands of feet underwater just to take them straight from the source. Next up, the last fish from the Midnight Zone, the goblin shark. The goblin shark looks like a very greedy individual that would work at a bank, eat pita bread sandwiches almost every day with a side of matzah, and not get along with an old-fashioned German person, mixed with someone who would cross their legs while dipping a biscuit into tea, while grinning a full smile full of crooked and decaying teeth, yelling about how America always has school shootings. Anyways, goblin sharks have a really good nose, and they use their sense of smell for hunting. They can extend their jaws forward very, very quickly to catch any unsuspecting prey. Japanese people like to compare goblin sharks to the yokai Tengu, who is very good in the smash hit 3DS game Yokai Watch 1, 2, and 3. Yokai Watch community will never die. They compare goblin sharks to Tengu because of their pink complexion and colossal nose. Apparently, on a few occasions, goblin sharks have been known to swim so close to the surface that humans could actually swim with them. Like, I'm pretty sure the humans still had scuba gear on it, but it's still pretty amazing to think about. These beasts are not aggressive towards humans at all, but they can still easily kill any human they wanted to, considering their estimated adult length is 18 feet long. So you don't stand a chance, Ethan. On to our next level. These zones are the deepest in the world. They're almost uninhabitable. So much so that most of the fish here, we've either already talked about them, or they're just not super interesting, which I know contradicts what I said before about the deeper we go, the stranger the fish, which isn't really wrong. The level of coolness just kind of plateaus in the Midnight Zone and then drops dramatically in the Abyssal and H Zone. We only really know a few mildly interesting fish, one of those being the viperfish, also known as the praying mantis of the deep ocean. Viperfish have extremely large teeth that curve up to their eyes because they physically cannot fit their teeth inside their mouth. They also have a bioluminescent streak along their side with a spine that sticks out from the top of the fish that glows very similar to the anglerfish's lure. The reason I compare these ugly MFs to the majestic praying mantis is because to hunt, they both stand perfectly still for hours at a time, just swaying in the wind/water current. We don't know exactly if the Yeti crab can survive in the rough conditions of the abyssal/H zone, but we do know they're on the deep sea floor, so there's a possibility. Their scientific name is the Kiwa, which means the goddess of the shellfish or of the sea. People can't seem to agree on which one it is. They live near tectonic plate boundaries because there are lots of undersea hydrothermic vents which are needed for the survival of the Yeti crab. The reason they have those hairs is so they can catch bacteria and microorganisms to feed on. They might also have a secondary use of being sensors to help find a mate, but other than that, we don't really know how Yeti crabs breed. Their claws are also super sharp and developed, so they might hunt/scavenge, but that's it for the abyssal/H zone. If you don't understand why the video is called Weird Fish of the Big Wet Salty Onion, it's because the earth is wet and salty, and it has layers like an onion! Alright, as always, more jokes at Andrew.com.